Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. I'm your host for the show, Greg Christ. Our other host, Frank Fear, is backstage, as is Mickey. I think Mickey Plumman is going to watch from backstage our first interview. We are thrilled tonight, as always, to have a great guest on with us. It is the fifth WVU volleyball coach, Jen Greeny. She'll join us here in just a moment. And again, Mickey's going to watch from backstage. Frank's going to join us here in just a moment. We want to remind you to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel, and that always helps us keep this kind of thing going. But again, we're thrilled to have with us tonight Jen Greeny, the volleyball coach at WVU. Frank, if you want to join us now, we'll get Jen on here in just a second. And there is Frank.
Good to see you, Greg. I share your excitement. Jen's going to do great things with WVU volleyball. Of that, I have absolutely no doubt.
Yeah, and I think, you and I, of course, as we go through this show and we have certain guests on, we tend to pay a little more attention to what sport it is and what's going on in that sport. And I'll be honest and say that I haven't paid a lot of attention to the volleyball team. But it's so interesting to go back and read the stats and read the history of the program and what it's done. And I heard Tony and Greg Hunter and those guys talking last night on their show about the baseball team, the soccer team, the rifle team, all these teams that are doing exceptionally well, and how good it felt right now to be a Mountaineer and a Mountaineer fan. And I think Coach Greeny fits right into this mold. And I think, again, brings a lot of confidence to the fans looking from afar. Hey, this thing's headed in the right direction. So,
yeah. And A.D. Baker, Wren Baker, I think, has done it again. He really has a knack of searching out talent. We had a chance to meet Mark Kellogg recently. Very impressed with him and obviously Coach DeVries. And if you look at Coach Greeny's resume, she is just at the high end of this in volleyball. She was a Washington State assistant, went to Washington State, was an all-conference team, all-conference player there, and then became a head coach in 2007 at Lewis and Clark, and then became the head coach at Washington State in 2011, and was there for a number of years. And if you look at these stats, they're very impressive. 347 career wins, 65% career win rate, consecutive seasons at Washington State recently, 6-time coach of the year. And then her work at Washington State, if you look at the figures there, they're just, 3-time all-conference selection when she was a Cougar as a player. And she and I were talking before the show, took over the Washington State program when it was really down. Wins is clearly an emphatic down, and won 235 games over 13 years, finished in the top 25 rankings a number of times, went to the NCAA's Conference Player of the Year. A number of her players made All-America. Who wouldn't, as a former coach, who wouldn't want a resume like that?
Oh my goodness, that's awesome. And like you pointed out there, the program was really down when she took over 0-18. I think it said the year before, and then to come in and accomplish what she did over 13 years is what a resume. And again, I think it just leads us as Mountaineer fans to say, hey, looks like we're heading in the right direction. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get her on so we can talk to her. They don't want to hear from us. They want to hear from her. And there she is, just like magic, Coach Jen Greeny. Coach, we appreciate you more than you know taking the time to visit with us.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's just a pleasure to be on the show. You guys have done, some great things. So, and all that, great talk about me. I'll have to, send you a T-shirt or two.
There you go. Got a couple new fans. There you go. Now we were looking at your history, your resume, and you obviously spent a lot of time at Washington State, 13 years, I think. What was it about the WVU job in Morgantown that made you feel like this was the place for you to be?
Yeah, well, Greg, many things. First of all, and I think maybe we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but that Pac-12, so I played in the Pac-10, coached as an assistant coach in the Pac-10, coached in the Pac-12, and then last year that rug was just pulled out from under us as a conference, and so to as a coach, you want to compete at the highest level. And I think, that was probably one of the main things that just as our season was winding down to maybe, put some feelers out for, jobs that were open. And then, I'm a small town girl. I'm from a farming community. Washington State is also a land grant institution. And so I'm not a city girl at all. And so, when the West Virginia name kind of came floating through and by, I did a little research. And like you said, Frank, AD Wren Baker is phenomenal. Anytime you're thinking about going to work for someone, I think he is at the very top of the list as far as athletic directors. He just is so special. And so having that conversation with him, is really one of the things that, drew me to coming out and taking a visit out here for this job. And then once I got here, just the people of Morgantown and West Virginia are really one of a kind and just really, really special. And that hasn't stopped since we even stepped foot in Morgantown. So, those were the things.
That kind of leads into the next question. And, one of the things that Frank and I note often on the show, as we have people that are coming in from different places, the basketball situation, one of the things that is always brought up is what you said. The people here, the place, there's something about it. There's something special about this place and the people around it. So I think you'll fit in nicely if you like that. So that the next question then is, what so far? What's it been like? How's the experience been so far?
Yeah, and you guys touched on it a little bit as far as the volleyball program at West Virginia has not been stellar. What we won't sugarcoat it at all. And when we took over at Washington State, they were not in a good place either. And there's something fun and challenging and really rewarding about rebuilding a program or building a program kind of from the ground up. And I think that's what's special about West Virginia is the people, and everyone that I have talked to, whether it's in the athletic department or around Morgantown or even in the state, are so willing to help. And Greg, I take no offense when you said you really had never checked on, West Virginia volleyball. I have heard that, so many times, but that's why we're here. We're here to really help grow West Virginia volleyball, not only at the university level, but throughout the state. And it is such an exciting sport right now that I do really hope, you come out and watch us and you do become a fan.
Oh, yeah, it is a fun sport to watch. And I think if you look, I would guess, I don't know this, no research has been done on this, but if you look around and talk to people about women's basketball, you talk about the soccer team, you talk about the rifle team, all teams, quite honestly, that, I hadn't seen a lot of. And but I think now with the new excitement that's been generated, not only in women's basketball, but in some of the other sports as well, I know, the college softball is awesome to watch. And I've watched, I did actually watch WU play once upon a time, a long time ago. I was at a coach's clinic and they had a volleyball game right afterwards. And I was really young then, and I decided to stay and watch because a lot of pretty girls. And I thought, man, this is awesome. And it was exciting to watch. It really was exciting to watch. And I think, I think breathing some new life into the program and get it on the right path, I think people here will respond. And I know, again, last night on Tony Carini's show, they talked about attendance at different events and how, the women's game was up. Even the men's attendance was extremely solid, even though we had a rough year. So I think everything that, as you talked about, the excitement and bringing it back, I think it's going to be fun, and I think people will watch. I think people will start paying attention. Again, it's just something here in the last couple of years that started to take off. Like I said, the women's basketball, most pointedly, with them playing Iowa, everybody watched that. They got to see what was going on. So, from that, it grew, and people became interested. People watched, and I think the same thing will be for you. Now, again, the only thing I know about volleyball is one person hits it over and the other person hits it back. And some of those tall people get on the front and smash it in other people's face. That's the only thing I know about volleyball. That's what I said about soccer one time. A broadcast guy I work with in the southern part of the state asked me to do a soccer game, and I'm like, okay, I know one guy's trying to kick it in, one guy's trying to keep it out. That's all I know about soccer. So they explained everything to me. The opening kickoff, the guy turns around and kicks it backwards, and I'm like, why do you do that for?
Okay, I promise I won't have you announce a game for
I was going to say,
I'll give you some time.
Because I made a total fool of myself that day. You, again, come in with this stellar record at Washington State. Frank and I have talked about this a couple of times about your staff. And I would have to say this is probably one of the most unique coaching staffs that I've ever seen. So why don't you tell the folks listening about your staff and why it's so different?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Well, first of all, when I became my first head coaching job, I think you mentioned was at Lewis Clark State in Lewiston, Idaho. And at that time, small school, you kind of have to do everything yourself. And I was married to a great athlete. He was a baseball player at Washington State, played in the Brewers organization for 3 years. And I was like, what am I going to do with you? And so I talked our athletic director into paying him nothing, but letting him be my assistant coach. And, there are actually a lot of similarities between baseball and volleyball, the arm swing mechanics and even, defense and ground balls and things like that. So I thought, we'll give it a year. If we're going to kill each other, we won't do it anymore. Now we've been coaching together 17 years. I think, there have not always been great moments, but there have been a lot of good moments as well. And so, we started coaching together, and it's been great. So that's one married couple. And so, when we took this job, our former assistant, she took the head job at Nevada. So she wasn't available to come. Our other assistant actually got the job at Washington State, so he wasn't available. So we were in the market for a couple of assistant coaches, and these names just kept coming forward. They also happen to be married. So we have two married couples, which is very unique. I think it's the only staff in the country. But man, talk about loyalty, right? Sometimes we send the boys out golfing or away from us, and the girls just hang out in the office. But so it's Mike and Aubrey Becker. They were just at Iowa before this. So experience in the Big Ten. Before that, they were many different places separately. Aubrey was at Florida State, Brown, Davidson, Oral Roberts. Mike actually hails from the great state of Pennsylvania. If we think it's the great state, I don't know. I should be careful what I say.
Only one part of it we have trouble
with. But I do know he coached at that other school that we don't like very much for a while. But he's West Virginia, bleeds West Virginia through and through. But he was at Illinois State and Michigan State before he was at Iowa. So great connections for both of them. But two married couples is very interesting, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, and really, in all seriousness, you talked about the loyalty and that sort of thing. But not only that, I think people, fans feel confident that, maybe you just won't up and take off because your husband's here. And, we heard a lot of talk here recently about Danny Hurley in the Los Angeles Lakers job. And one of the things that, he talked about was his wife and who was from New Jersey. And talked about the Kentucky job. And he said when he was offered that, he thought, if I had to move my wife to Kentucky, she would kill me. So, and I know that sounds funny, but, that plays into it. Somebody's messing with you there, aren't they? I see somebody throwing stuff at her. So,
yeah, no, but, my lights went off, so I'm trying to. There we go.
Yeah, I had that one night. I did Rob Summers on my show, and he had to keep doing like this to get his lights to come back on. But anyway, I think that that dynamic, as long as you guys don't have a falling out during a game or something or a match, that it should be good, because I think again it's secure for everybody. You're both here.
Right. And we really do try, and
he had to be forced to come.
Yeah, and we try to really create a family atmosphere, for our recruits and our players. So that's just kind of built in with that as well, for all of us. So yeah, it's been going great. I know we've only been here, for maybe a short 6 months, but already we're going in the right direction.
Right. Well, I have to. I know I've told Frank this before. I coached high school basketball for 30 years, and the only thing my wife, and I always say you got to have that support, to be successful. You got to have somebody behind you that's encouraging and will support you. She knows absolutely nothing about basketball. Even after I coached for 30 years, she still don't know anything about basketball. And she, one time my son played for me, and she was fussing at me one night because I took him out too soon, or I didn't put him in or something. I'm like, wait a minute. I said, you sit up in the stands, and the only time you applaud is when everybody else applauds. You don't know what's going on. I said, you don't get to have an opinion here. So I know that wouldn't have worked well for me at all.
Yeah. And I know that feeling, because my dad was my high school coach, basketball coach, and my mom, again, grew up in Montana and was a barrel racer, so knew nothing about basketball. And the same thing, she would get mad at him too. So I understand it from that point.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so that dynamic really strikes me when I say, I'm like, man, live, that'd be tough.
That's what most people say, like, there's no way this. And I say, well, if I get tired of him, he just goes recruiting, so it's great.
There you go.
That's great.
The good thing is you're the boss, so you can tell him where to go. Straighten him up real quick.
Yeah.
Yep.
What? And again, you'll have to be more in depth on your explanations, but just because of our knowledge, and I'm sure other folks' knowledge of how the game is played, what is your approach and your goals, and how you bring all this together and then be successful? I know it starts with recruiting. I would think that based on the facilities and the history here, recruiting would be pretty good, I would think. I don't really know again about volleyball, but what are your goals and what you want to accomplish here?
Yeah, absolutely. Rebuilding a program, I think it's baby steps. Of course, I always give Mark Kellogg a hard time. I'm like, you're making us all look bad. Like, you did not so fast. So we always give Mark a hard time. But, the program, volleyball program, has not been very good pretty much ever. They've gone to one NCAA in the 50 years of volleyball's existence here at West Virginia. So, and Big 12 volleyball is pretty tough, especially now that the Pac-12 is no longer, and we've absorbed some of those teams. So I think you're exactly right. Recruiting, first of all, I think getting the culture correct, and just being competitive. I think, they only won 2 matches. They only won 2 matches in the last 2 years, which is not good. And so just really trying to recruit and get players that want to help build this, program. And, so I think the transfer portal has definitely helped us. So you'll see those kind of on that roster on the bottom there. We've had quite a few players come in that will be new to this program. And so, just getting better every year. But of course, our ultimate goal is to get to the NCAA tournament. And I think every coach's ultimate goal is, of course, to win a national championship.
I'm just curious, and this will probably, if anybody's a volleyball fan out there is going to say, that guy's an idiot. But when you recruit a player, in football, you look at the guy, how big is he? How fast is he? The other intangibles. What do you look for in a volleyball player? Do you look by position, which I do some research, and I looked up all the positions and what they were called, so I would not be totally.
Look at you, Greg. Good job.
Yeah, I'm already becoming a fan. but do you look for like, the best athlete, or do you look for somebody that fits a certain position each way?
Yeah, I think volleyball is a pretty position specific sport. But if you're a hitter, right now we are not very tall. So going into this next, 2025, 2026 recruiting classes, we've got to get some more size. We've got to get more athleticism. We go a lot by like jump, touch, so we want players that are, touching over 10-2 probably. We just got, one of our transfers is touching 10-6. We haven't had that in the gym for a while. So I think that's a great addition. But, we have a great setter already committed from Texas in 2025. So that's going to be fun to see. But yeah, I think, starting out, our system is going to be a little bit of who we have in the gym already, who we've inherited, just trying to get more consistent, and then adding those pieces. Like I said, we've got a few of those from the transfer portal that will help us, already this year, and probably starting with the 2026 class of more freshmen coming in. But yeah, athleticism, size, their jumping ability for sure. Yeah, we've just got to get more physical at the net.
Maybe you and Coach Kellogg could work together a little bit. You talk about people jumping 10-6. That's
oh, I know. That's what he was like. Does she play basketball? I was like, no.
No basketball skills at all.
Yeah, I'm like, get out of here.
That's funny. So how's that? I mean, how's the recruiting? I know the portal, again, I don't know a lot about it, but you're getting some people in. How's that going? Are you finding it any easier or more difficult or the same as it was when you were at Washington State?
Yeah, I think the first year is always tough. I mean, we did get 2 great transfers coming in right when we got the job in December. One transferred from Wisconsin, one from Louisville, 2 top 5 programs. That was Sydney Reed and Alexis Finvold. They were at great programs. They didn't get a lot of playing time, but that also doesn't mean they're not good. I mean, they're very good, and they'll definitely play for us this incoming year. So yeah, transfer from Coppin State. She was an all-conference player. And you will also see on there a couple of internationals. So one from Germany, one from Slovenia. We had great success with that at Washington State. So we'll probably continue that. What's maybe a little bit better is we are closer to Europe, and there's a lot more people here on the East Coast. So I would say that's an advantage from being at Washington State as far as recruiting goes. But we did have a volleyball only facility at Washington State, which I think was definitely an advantage for us there. We love the Coliseum, of course, but it's a little big for the sport of volleyball. So we'll just have to, see if we can get some more fans and try and make a home court advantage.
Yeah, that's tough with like I said, with that big arena. It's even tougher for the basketball teams to.
Right.
It's so big that even when you have a good crowd, it doesn't look very good.
Right.
But of course, I think across the country you can see people building these new arenas. They're all building them smaller.
Right.
And I think it's that'll come eventually. Frank and I and other discussion we're talking about West Virginia high school volleyball. Again. I don't know how competitive West Virginia high school volleyball is. I do know that when I was coaching in high school, that we didn't have volleyball, and it didn't start until I think maybe a year or two after I had quit coaching, which was 2012. So in 2014, 2015 is the first time they ever had volleyball at our school. I think most of the high schools now have volleyball teams, but I don't know how competitive the players are in West Virginia, or if there are players that are good enough to play at that level or not. Have you noticed anything about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think, like you said, volleyball West Virginia volleyball is maybe a little bit behind just because they haven't had, high school programs and things like that. You think about states like California and Texas that, have had volleyball, for a long time, even Florida, those places with beaches, I guess, where volleyball kind of, initiated. But it's such a fast growing sport that I think West Virginia is catching up rapidly. And so, that's fun to see. I know our very own Morgantown High won the state championship last year. So that's exciting to see. But, as far as level for West Virginia coming to help us right now, probably the talent level, maybe not quite there yet, but I think it'll get there, as, better coaching continues to come in the state. People really learn about the sport. Volleyball in general across the country is the #1 female sport by a long ways as far as participation numbers. And so I think West Virginia is definitely catching up with that, which I know the high school basketball coaches don't like, but because a lot of girls aren't playing basketball anymore.
Right.
Go to volleyball. And so, but I think West Virginia, definitely has, they will have the talent level as we continue to grow the sport.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna ask you one more dumb question, then I'll turn it over to Frank for some good questions. Whenever the setter pops it up there and the I don't know what she's called, jumps up and slams it down on the other person and they get a point. Is that equivalent to like the slam dunk in basketball? Is that the way the players feel, the fans view it?
Yeah, I mean, but it happens more often than the slam dunk. Right. But yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's getting to be such a physical game. So Greg, when you come or you can always come to a practice too. If you're down there on the court level, I mean, these girls are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", and physical and jump. And like I said, touching 10'5", 10'6", and that ball is going fast. And so, yeah, that part of it, you do get that adrenaline rush for sure. But you're right. It's an outside hitter or a middle blocker.
Gotcha.
You're getting there. I like it.
I'm gonna study. I promise. When speaking of practice, when do you actually start physically practicing?
Yeah, so
I know you do stuff year round, but
yeah, we're almost on that same schedule as football. So we'll start August, right around August 7th, is when we'll start practice, and our first matches are going to be the end of August. We go to Wake Forest for a tournament, so that's not too far of a drive, especially people that are in the southern part of the state.
Right. Well, I'm in Morgantown. That's where I work, so I will definitely come and watch practice. You can count on it. I'll be texting you. Hey, can I come on?
Good, absolutely.
Frank, I'll let you ask some good questions now that I've taken up half the time with these silly questions. So go ahead.
Good
We're
questions.
Like a volleyball 101. I won't call it volleyball for dummies. I'll just call it
volleyball for dummies. Is what I was thinking.
Yeah, I just one of the themes of this show, as you know, Coach, is then and now, and that left-hand column, you referenced it. I don't want to say there hasn't been a lot to cheer about in volleyball in the past, but there's probably a parallel to baseball, where Coach Mazey took a team that really had not been that successful and turned it into a nationally competitive team. And you're right, only to the NCAA's once. And I was really surprised when I looked at the Hall of Fame that there's no volleyball player at WVU that's in the WVU Sports Hall of Fame. Plenty of soccer players, plenty of women's basketball players, but that gives you a real opportunity. And I think another thing that you bring that's unique is that, take for example, Coach Brown is now facing a quartet of former Pac-12 teams, whereas that's where you were. So you've played against these teams, so you have a real advantage. So could you talk about the situation in the conference, the Big 12 as you see it, having played some of those teams in the past, but some will be obviously new, and then talk about the national picture. And I mentioned to you, we have a we have a little video stream of that phenomenal game last year at Nebraska that broke all kinds of records. And even if you're not a volleyball fan, you got to get excited when you're looking at those photos, because they actually outdrew the Huskers football team. So talk about the Big 12, and I'll show in a few seconds here the video of that phenomenal game at Nebraska.
Yeah, for sure. So like you said, with that addition of those 4 schools from the Pac-12, you know, again, I think the Big 12 is a great volleyball conference. Big 10 has kind of been head and shoulder above everybody else as a conference as a whole for probably the last 4 or 5 years. And then Big 12 and Pac-12 kind of right under that. ACC has only had a couple of schools, you know, Louisville and Pitt. And then kind of same thing with the SEC. Florida has traditionally kind of carried them along with Kentucky. So I think top to bottom, the Big 12 is very, very competitive. I'm glad we're losing that school, Texas. Get them out of there. So we don't have to face them because they've won, you know, 2 national championships in a row. So, but other than that, a very, very competitive volleyball conference. I think probably of those 4 schools that joined from the Pac-12, Arizona State, you know, I think is going to be very, very good this year. Of course, BYU has always had a very good volleyball program traditionally. Houston, the last few years has been great. Kansas State. So yeah, it's, you know, for us, we want to get, you know, kind of to that middle and see where that can take us and then keep building from there.
Mm-hmm. Could there be a day in Morgantown where the football stadium will be a volleyball stadium the way it was here? We're showing this. This is that circumstance last year. Look at that stadium in Lincoln, Nebraska. And here's the coach and the players coming out. And it's we're going to have some sky views of the stadium, and you'll just see it's just amazing what happened. What were your thoughts when you observed this last year, Coach?
Yeah, just absolutely amazing. I mean, you know, we had all heard them talking about wanting to do this. They, you know, touted it Volleyball Day in Nebraska. They had 4, you know, schools from Nebraska playing and filled this football stadium with 92,000 fans. I mean, it's just absolutely unbelievable. And just great for our sport. It was super fun. We were actually at practice when this happened at Washington State, and we stopped and we put it on our big screen. And so it was great to just see how many people were excited about this, and that they were able to, you know, pull it off and bring a lot of media attention to the sport of volleyball.
Yeah, it just is incredible. And 92,000, just phenomenal. And it just shows you the interest and the growth. And I think that just fuels the interest in Morgantown, again, a way that the baseball has. You know, one of the topics that we've talked about a lot on this program, and the topic's not going away. And the question I'm going to ask is, to what extent you think it applies also to volleyball and women's sports in general, and that is the changing landscape in college athletics with the portal, with name, image, and likeness, and so on. New terrain for head coaches makes the job of a head coach much more complex. Are you feeling it? We imagine you are, and if so, how?
Yeah, you know, I don't think any of us coaches got into coaching, you know, to deal with name, image, and likeness, and even the transfer portal, and, you know, agents, and now pay for play. You know, none of us got into coaching for that purpose. So it makes it difficult. You know, when I was a player, we were just happy to get our couple of T-shirts and play for our school and get our tuition paid for, if that's something that, you know, we had a scholarship for. So the landscape has definitely changed, but with that, we as coaches and athletic departments and fans even, unfortunately have to adapt to that as well. I think, the transfer portal, there were always transfers but now it's just crazy. And, you hope you can keep your team intact or whatever that might be. But, I think for us right now, building a program, the transfer portal probably helps us. But originally I thought kind of that name, image, likeness would kind of just be for those, few football and basketball players, but it's not. It's now for everyone. So we're even seeing it in the sport of volleyball that we, have to go out and raise money and get with Country Roads Trust and fans only have so much money. And, I think that's tough. Do we give to facilities? Do we give to the department? Do we give to, the Country Roads Trust? So I think it's pulling fans in a lot of different directions and pulling coaches in those directions as well, but it's not going away. And so we have to find a way, to make that work and, still have great loyalty within our team and create that culture. So, the landscape's not exactly great. I don't think it does any favors for women's sports in general. I think especially the new legislation that has come down with, all that money now that we as universities have to pay out. I think it really hurts female sports and facilities and, just the student athlete wellness and well-being, that part of it as well.
Great. A couple of promotional questions. I'm going to put the graph back on if you could talk, and then I'll kick it back to Greg. It's about fans coming to games. Your first conference game is at the end of September against Cincinnati. 9 home games, and a big question along those lines is media access. So where and how can fans watch WVU volleyball if they're not there in person? Then a follow-up question in the middle of that column is you've got a number of camps coming up in succession next month. So talk a bit about the camps. We know that's important not only for the kids around the state at various levels, but also for recruiting as they're exposed to you and your staff and your players. So first, talk about the home schedule and the media availability, tickets and all that kind of stuff, and then the camps.
Yeah, for sure. We start our season with 4 weekends of tournaments. We typically would host one of those weekends, but because we got the job, pretty late, we won't be hosting a tournament this year. So, our first home game won't be until the end of September. That's kind of a long ways to wait, 4 weeks into the season, but it is what it is for right now. If people are wanting to watch the Big 12 matches specifically, that's going to be ESPN Plus. So all of those home and away matches on the Big 12 should be streamed on ESPN Plus, which is fantastic. And then, as far as tickets go, just calling the West Virginia ticket office or buying right here at the gate. Super easy way. They're very inexpensive. So, creating, a fun family night or, heading here after work, for hot, a great dinner of, hot dog and nachos and some volleyball. If it's Greg's night to cook, that's what he's normally doing. Right.
There you go.
Yeah. And then, as far as camps go, you're exactly right, Frank. That's what we love to do is bring, our knowledge to people at camp. And we have, many different ages. We have our team camp, and then we have a middle school age camp, a high school age camp, and then maybe a little bit more kind of advanced skill elite camp at the end of that week for more of those, high school kind of varsity level type athletes. But we love to grow camp. I know, especially that middle school camp is getting, pretty full. I think there's still bit of room in the high school and the advanced elite camp. But if you're a middle school age, I would get, that camp registration done maybe as soon as possible. But it should be a fun week. And, we like to just go hard and get it all done in 1 week, and, go from 6 a.m. till 11 o'clock at night as coaches, trying to do the best we can and create a great camp and atmosphere and teach a lot of those skills.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Greg might come. We might have to have like a
I was going to
older man volleyball camp.
I know the football program. I don't know if they still do it or not. They used to have in the summer they would have a camp for football wives, I think it was called.
Okay.
I remember that.
The women would come and they would teach them the football, So now you need to have, the volleyball camp for old guys that don't know anything about volleyball. So,
old guys volleyball camp. We'll just name it that.
Yeah, when I hear about you talking about these ladies jumping, and stuff, I'm like, good gosh, I couldn't do that, and if I could, I would hurt myself on the landing. So that's pretty impressive. One more question I want to ask you before you go is here recently, the women's basketball, for example, with Caitlin Clark has become a kind of a national phenomena, and a lot more people paid attention. I don't know if they still are or not, but in the NBA now you're having all these. And I have to think that some of this is set up with her getting knocked around and then her knocking people around. You have to feel like, well, they're doing that to draw attention, which that's fine. But do you think that, in my opinion, is this on, like, say, volleyball? I look at it the same way softball in colleges, college softball. That used to not be a thing. And they started showing it on TV. People started watching it and realized how exciting it was. So now it's on all the time. Lots of people watch it. And also in high schools in West Virginia, there were no girls softball teams at our high schools for the longest time. And again, that started while I was, coaching basketball, I remember. Do you think that, media coverage, for one thing, would help immensely with this, getting that product out there? Do you think it's going to take, to grow the sport, the media getting on board, or are you going to have a Caitlin Clark volleyball player? I don't know how you would do that, but what's it going to take to get this elevated to the public conscious?
I think you're exactly right. And I think it's the media coverage. I mean, if you're sitting at a restaurant or you're at home, flipping through your channels, and there's an exciting sport on, or maybe a sport that you don't even know that much about, but it's on, it's going to get watched and become more popular for sure. I mean, volleyball is a great spectator sport. There's always something happening. It's fast paced. It's, pretty physical. Like I talked about, just as far as, the jumping and the diving and, pretty exciting. I also think that because it's an Olympic year, and our U.S. National team has traditionally been very popular and done, a great job Olympic wise. I think they get a lot of TV coverage. And so I think that is something else that, could possibly help with that. But yeah, I think more TV executives need to realize that we don't want to watch, I don't know, curling or whatever it is, put volleyball on TV, because like I mentioned, it is the most popular, like high school age sport for girls in the United States right now. So hopefully we can get more people out to the West Virginia matches and teach you the game, and I know for us as coaches and our great student athletes are going to be very, very accessible to fans. We'll be out in the community. We'll be down on the floor after matches for people to talk to. So hopefully, that helps grow just the fan base as well.
Yeah, well, I can attest to the fact that if it's on TV, we'll watch. I know last year during the tournament, NCAA tournament, I was doing my show at a local establishment, and they had volleyball game on, and we started watching. It was, of course, Pitt was playing, so we started rooting against them. Of course, I can't remember who they were playing, but we were rooting for. And I know even after the show ended, 3 or 4 of us there we wanted to stay and watch the end of the game, and it was fun and exciting. Of course, it was made even better by the fact that Pitt got beat, but we still really enjoyed it. And I think getting on TV is going to be a factor. But man, sounds like you got everything headed in the right direction, and we're excited. Can't wait. We'll definitely come watch some matches for sure, and come over and watch you practice. It sounds like you got things raring to go.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, and glad we at least made 3 new fans.
There you go.
That's
there
right.
you go. You got 3 new fans, and the 3 people that watch our show, they'll become fans. So there you go. Thank you so much, Coach Jen Greeny, the new women's volleyball coach. I don't guess there is a men's volleyball. Is there a men's volleyball team?
We do not have men's. Yep.
Does the NCAA does, do they not?
Yeah. Yes. But I don't think anybody in the BYU does. But I think that's it as far as and they play in, I don't know, another league, kind of like our men's soccer does.
Right. All right. Well, Coach, we do appreciate it so much. It's been so much fun talking to you. We've learned a lot, and we're looking forward to seeing you in action. Thank you again.
Great. Thanks so much.
Well, Frank,
How about that?
it was as good the second time as it was the first time.
Boy, I'll tell you, she is very impressive, and you get excited. And, we've talked about this before. You've been involved in it, Mickey, and I'll tell you, I am of age. That's a headline. And I've been around the country at different universities. I have never seen the array of quality head coaches across the board that we have at West Virginia right now. These are not only skillful as coaches, they're great character people.
Yeah.
And she just, I think she's going to build a powerhouse in Morgantown. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with you, Frank. I tell you, she is really an impressive lady. And not only is she personally impressive, but the record that she's established is just really top notch. Kudos to Wren Baker as he continues just a fantastic job of bringing in some of the top talent in the nation into West Virginia's competitive sports. He's just done a fantastic job, I think.
Yep, and I think Frank, we've all talked numerous times about the confidence we feel in all the Mountaineer programs right now, and I think this just adds to it. She was like you said, high character, great interview, really interesting, to listen to her, and it gets you excited for whatever the sport might be, and I can guarantee you, me and my coworkers will definitely be over watching some practice and attending some games. Not just because of her, but just
the nice thing about those matches being on ESPN Plus is that we'll be able to watch them and then comment. Yeah. We'll follow the team just as we did as we do the other teams, and it's just going to be fantastic. We were both looking forward to that interview, Greg, and you're absolutely correct. It's even better watching it the second time. As for those of you that have been following the chat, Joey Foster mentioned that she had a family emergency, couldn't be with us live, so there was no chance to interact with, have our guests and what viewers interact with Coach. But we really, given the circumstance, really appreciate her taking the time to be with us before she left. She's in the air right now as we speak.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we do appreciate that, and it was a good interview. We both enjoyed it. Frank, I think before we go to any more WVU sports, I guess this is WVU sports related. We want to make sure we mention the passing of NBA WVU legend Jerry West, who passed away at 86. And we're all heartbroken here, and I know in West Virginia, but all over the country, I'm sure. What a great example and person he was, and a representative of West Virginia. All through his life, and I was just it got me curious. I've been listening as we watch this graphic to some of the statistics. All the radio stations, of course, talking about it, and I read these statistics and I was just amazed at them. But oddly enough, and watching his talents is enough, and looking at his points per game, his assists, et cetera, et cetera. One thing that caught my attention as I was scrolling through some ESPN stats on him, in 13 years with the Lakers in the NBA, he never had one ejection or one technical foul. And I found that to be amazing. And I took a double take. I'm sure, am I reading that right? And I thought, that tells you right there, what kind of a person he was. And of course, we all know what kind of a basketball player he was. Just phenomenal.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And we're seeing some footage of that phenomenal season.
Yep.
Back in the late 50s that led to a national championship game against California. And you're going to see the end of it. I really think if the Mountaineers had just a few more seconds, they would have won that game.
Yep.
They lost 71-70. And I remember as a small kid, I was lucky enough to grow up in Syracuse, New York. And back in those days, the NBA teams were clustered in the Northeast. And so there was a pro team, believe it or not, the Syracuse Nationals that are now the Philadelphia 76ers. So as a very young kid, all my friends were into basketball, pro basketball. And so I started watching college basketball. A lot of that, I was there when Jimmy Brown was on the football team. A lot of people don't know he was a 2-year starter on the basketball team. And then he also made All-America as a lacrosse player. So, I mean, there was a lot to follow. But this game was phenomenal at the end, and you're going to see it here. This is the championship game against Cal. West Virginia actually is in white because we were the higher-ranked team. He missed the free throw, and that was the end of the game.
Yeah.
And West Virginia lost by 1 point. And it was, so close. And then as a pro, I remember this situation right here. In April of 1970, I remember watching this game on Jones Avenue where we live. And there's the great Walt Frazier. Dave DeBusschere hits that shot to win the game in the NBA playoffs. And there's Jerry West with a 60-footer. And they won. 60-footer.
Yeah, that particular play is one, I guess, is about my first memory of Jerry West. And back then, you got to watch the games, but they were on tape delay. And but we had heard about his shot. So we all stayed up late at night. It didn't come on until 11:30 at night and watched the replay because we knew he hit that shot. And that's one of my earliest memories of watching basketball. So I didn't get to see him play really in his prime. I mean, I'm sure I did. I just don't remember it. And but I do remember seeing that shot, and I always loved that because I knew he was from West Virginia, and he had you look again, you hear these guys talking today, and I heard the Van Gundy guy on the NBA broadcast the other day talk about Doncic and Kyrie Irving being the greatest scoring backcourt in the history of the NBA, and I thought, how far is he talking? How far back? I said, because I went back and looked at Jerry West and Gail Goodrich.
Yeah.
They both averaged
can't beat them
26, 27 points a game, plus 7 or 8 assists a game, and I'm thinking they're not averaging that. I mean, and you think about Walt Frazier and Earl Monroe and people like that. I'm like, where do these guys come up with these wild things they throw out? And I'm like, really, you can't compare that stuff. But
that's right.
You look through these stats. Another thing that stuck out in my mind, other than the technicals, was his shooting percentage. His lowest shooting percentage season was his first season in '61. He shot 42%. After that, he never was below 44. 1 year he shot 51% from the floor. That's 47%, 47, 49, 48. That's not that's not common. These guys, even today, the great shooters, they practically shoot just about every time they get the ball. They may average more points, but as far as percentages goes, man, I'm telling you what, I don't know if there's too many that has a career that long with that level of shooting percentage. I mean, it's just, if you look at it, it's just amazing. Like I said, the lowest after that was 44% the next year. And then it went 46, 48, 49, 51, 49%. That's amazing.
He was,
Unreal. And of course, his free throw percentage was over career was 80-some%. And you just don't see that anymore with that long of a career. Pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. And as great as that 1970 event was, with that 60-foot shot that won the game in overtime, I think this one was even better. I don't know if you remember this, Mick. I do. Going back to 1962, also in the NBA Finals. And what's interesting about this, it's against the hated Boston Celtics back then, because the Los Angeles, they're not now, obviously.
Yeah.
But he was playing against Bob Cousy, who was an icon.
Yeah.
And let me show you the film on this. It's amazing. End of the game. They're getting the ball into Cousy, number 14. Jerry West steals the ball and scores at the buzzer.
Yep.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. And, I always said too, even though, basketball purists, basketball fanatics all understood how good Jerry West was, I don't know that he ever got the credit. You just didn't hear talk about him, but mainly because of the championships. He only won one, but I said, you look back, I think he played in 9 NBA finals. The Boston Celtics, of course, had a phenomenal team, and just had better teams. They had better people around, their main players than what the Lakers did. But he played in 9 NBA finals. I mean, that's in 13 years. That's pretty phenomenal in itself. But that footage is unbelievable to watch. That's awesome. He was a great player. And I don't know, like I said, everybody that knows basketball knows how good he was and understands. I think some of the younger people obviously don't understand how good he was. But I think a lot of it is, had he won 4 or 5 of those NBA finals, then, that's all we would have heard about forever. But because he didn't, it kind of took away a little bit from his legacy. And then, of course, the younger kids don't understand the logo either. And I said, name, image, and likeness. I said, the NBA, they've never come out and said, it's Jerry West, but there sure is an awful lot of likeness in that picture.
It is Jerry West.
You've seen the picture. So and I'm sure they never admitted it because they probably had to pay him a fortune.
And I hope this will happen. And our good friend Mike Dunlap is working with us. I was rewatching today when back in, I think, 2005, when Jerry West gave his address when he was inducted into WVU Hall of Fame. And I think it was the Hall of Fame. Anyway, he acknowledged Willie Aker as his soulmate. And, Willie is a legend in West Virginia coaching. And I think won 75% of his games. Was it Logan County?
Logan.
Yeah, Logan. And he's still with us, and we're trying to get him on the show, and I hope we can work that out.
I'll tell you somebody else. I'm sorry, Frank, for interrupting.
No, please, not at all.
I was listening to Mike Russo today on the radio, and he had Rod Thorne on.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and that was a great interview. And Rod Thorne talked about, he said, in all honesty, he said when Jerry was a junior, he said he was a great player and everybody knew it, but he said really he was second to Willie Akers. He said there was a guy named Willie Akers who got all the headlines and was considered the best basketball player. And he said, of course, Jerry then went on the senior year and had a phenomenal year and kind of changed the narrative a little bit. But Willie Akers was a heck of a basketball player in his own.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, he really, really was.
Yeah.
But you know what? Switching gears a bit, Mickey, Greg, and I were exchanging texts all over the weekend with the WVU baseball team. It didn't end up the way we had hoped. But Mickey, your thoughts about just the phenomenal experience. And unfortunately, we ended up going up against a guy named Honeycutt, who made it very difficult to win. But what are your thoughts about this baseball team?
Very, very proud of them, Frank. I tell you, for them to compete the way that they did against North Carolina, I don't think anybody really gave them, much of a chance. North Carolina had only lost, I think, 3 games all season at home. Definitely had the home field crowd advantage. Yep. What I'm particularly proud of this team for is the way they came back in the second game and played after Honeycutt had that walk-off homer in the ninth in the first game, which is really quite a gut punch. I mean, if you haven't, competed in sports, it's hard to realize what something like that does to your mental frame. Yeah. And yet the Mountaineers came out, the next day for game 2 and just played their hearts out. Bases loaded, bottom of the ninth for us this time. And doggone if Honeycutt doesn't hit a leadoff homer in that game to get them up, 1-0. So, his last at bat in the first game, his first at bat in the second game, he goes back-to-back home runs. So, as I mentioned in the text I was sending out over the weekend, I think if you take Honeycutt out, we're in Omaha. No question about it. I mean, the guys just played their hearts out. Yeah. What a tribute to Coach Mazey, his job that he did at WVU for his, his tenure there. I can be more proud of them. I mean, they just went out, played their hearts out. Just came out, about 6 inches short on that final out.
That's right.
Where he dove for the first base bag. Another 6 inches. And, we've tied it up, and who knows what happens when you go to extra innings. Frank, I did want to comment a little bit about Mr. Clutch here, Zeke from Cabin Creek. It's a sad, sad day for not only all West Virginians, but not only all fans of the Los Angeles Lakers, and not only all basketball fans, but anyone that knows the character of the man, where he came from, in a holler between two mountains in Cabin Creek. I don't know if you read the story or not, is his house and his driveway where he had his basketball goal actually was his neighbor's house that he used to go over and play basketball with and practice. And it was on the side of a hill. Yeah. So he made sure he sharpened his shooting percentage because he did not want to run downhill to have to get that basketball.
How about that?
I mean,
funny story I heard. I'm sorry, Mickey.
Yeah, that's okay. The logo, from Zeke, from Cabin Creek to the logo. I thought John Antoni did a great job in describing, if you read the article that John wrote about Jerry today and his passing. But, I mean, what a record the man set. And, I mean, what an image. What a gold standard to set. And certainly the greatest athlete ever to come out of West Virginia, in my estimation. Yep, and, to your point, Greg, he competed in 9 NBA championship games, won 1. I think the Boston Celtics beat him 8 times. Yeah. And I heard Bill Russell say one time, who arguably is the greatest defensive player ever in the NBA, in my estimation. But he said, Jerry West may not have won a championship, but he was always a champion. Yeah. And I think that speaks to the character of the man. Not only did he come within 1 point of winning, the national championship, he went on to play with Oscar Robertson in the Olympics that next summer. And then he went on with his stellar career. And I believe, Greg, that the 13 seasons he played in the NBA, he was on the NBA All-Star team 13 years in a row. Yeah, I don't know that if anyone has matched that sort of a record. Yeah. And not only is in the Hall of Fame as a player, but he'll be enshrined this October as what they call a contributor for his general manager role with the Lakers. Yep. And what a great image for the state of West Virginia to be so proud of. We're all going to miss him.
Yep, sure are. I heard on the show today, Rod Thorne said that because Mickey mentioned the Zeke from Cabin Creek, which he didn't like that nickname. I heard him say one time he said it made him feel like he had the appearance of being some hick from up in the woods in a holler somewhere. And I thought, okay, I've been to Cabin Creek, so why are you offended? But anyway, so Rod Thorne said that he was telling Mike Russo, of course, who's from up north in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, somewhere. He said, when you drive through, he said there's a sign on one side of it. It says, welcome to Cabin Creek. And he said on the same sign on the backside coming the other way, it says, welcome to Shillian. So he said, you got one sign there for both towns. So, and another thing I wanted to mention, I forgot to, and I was talking about his stats. He won the most valuable player award in 1969, and they got beat in that championship, but he won the MVP in that championship for the series. And I said, you don't hear of that happen, you know? So
right.
that was another thing. And then one last story, personal story. He did come down to Tex Williams Arty Museum when Tex had him placed enshrined, and he came down and helped with the grand opening and all that. And what a humble guy. I mean, if you've ever been to Arty, West Virginia, you'll know what I'm talking about. Cabin Creek is a metropolis compared to Arty. And he came down and talked, gave a speech and talked and hung around, gave autographs, talked to people. Just a phenomenal guy. He was so gracious and humble, and gave you the impression that he was tickled to death to be there, you know. And I'll never forget when I was just a young kid, my dad was sick. He had ALS, and he always a big sports fan, and always he would try to get his buddies riled up. So he would always tell his buddies that Oscar Robertson was better than Jerry West. He'd always tell them that. He'd say, "Oh, Oscar Robertson was a lot better than Jerry West. He'd just do it to get him going." Well, they had gone somewhere to watch some event down in Charleston. Jerry West was there. And I'll never forget, he signed a program for my dad. And my dad at that time was confined to a wheelchair, but it said, and they called him Babe. He said, "Dear Babe, I am better than the Big O, Jerry West." And I said, my dad treasured that. And I said, what I wouldn't give to have a copy of that right now. You know?
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, he just said, "I'm better than the Big O."
That's
So,
tremendous.
yeah,
Hey, talking about basketball, we thought we'd give everybody an update about the WVU basketball team, and it looks like things have just about shaped up in terms of a roster. We haven't done this for a couple of weeks for obvious reasons. The season's over, but the new ads since we last talked, the additions are in green, and also you'll see, and you've seen this before if you've watched our show, the length of time they have left is in various colors on the right hand. I think it's fair to say, Greg, you coach basketball, that the guys they've added, Yusufu from the portal, and then two incoming freshmen, Powell and Jay. Jay's a preferred walk-on. They're going to be in a learning mode, even though Yusufu only has 1 year left coming from Washington State. It seems to me that DeVries, Small, Okani, Andre, who's the center, but also, as I view it, maybe the lowest rated by the services of these incoming players. Hansberry and Harris are going to be the core of this team. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you look at this, and like I said, you don't know a whole lot about all these players if you haven't paid attention. You know, one of the things that, of course, concerns you being in the Big 12 is the size factor. And you know, we don't, obviously there's not a lot of size on that roster, but I think Coach DeVries, his you know, philosophy is to win with defense and execute, you know, precisely on offense. And, you know, this doesn't necessarily bode poorly for WVU without the size, because it's all about matchups. And if the other team, you know, has 2 7-footers out there, well, you may not match up with them, but they don't match up with you either, because they can't guard anybody. So I think, you know, what it looks to me like he's gone after has been, you know, anywhere, you know, the 6 foot, 6'6", 6'7" guys who are athletes. And I think if you watch his son play, you saw some of that. You know, he's a good shooter, good offensive player, but he's a really good defender too. And I think a lot of these guys are going to be good defensive players. You know, we'll see about scoring. I think that's always up in the air. You know, you may be a good scorer at one place, but not at the other, or at one level and not at the other. But I think his focus is on, you know, athleticism and, you know, quickness, shooting, those type of things, and playing good, solid, hard defense. If you watched his team play, they were really a good defensive team. So I think that's kind of what he's focused on. I mean, I'm sure he would like to have, you know, a few 6'9" and, you know, that sort of thing, but everybody would. So I don't know that, you know, I know people are going to look at it and say, man, we don't have any big people. But, you know, the game's changed an awful lot. And, you know, it's not the old days where you, you know, you get the big guy on the side by himself and throw it in there and let him go to work. You don't see that very often anymore. Even with the big guys that played this year in the finals, you know, you didn't see a lot of one-on-one, you know, give it to him, clear out. They worked it around and got him in position to give him the ball in good spots. And that's where they were effective. And you can do that with a 7-foot guy or a 6'5" guy. If you get him in good spot, maybe a mismatch, whatever.
Yep.
It's all about your scheme and all that. So that's kind of my take on it. I think you can see what kind of team he's putting together.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the other things I think that's important to look at in that chart, and we're going to do it as we close the show, looking at football, is where these guys that left WVU, where they landed. And Andrew Corbett from 24/7 Sports, Mountaineer Sports, just reported today that Farrakhan, that's in green under transferred, has finally has a settling place, and it's Hampton. And if you look at that transfer list, he pointed this out. The same thing you'll see in football. The kids that are leaving, I shouldn't call them kids, but the players who are leaving, relatively few are going to Power 4 or 5 schools.
Right.
Wilson and Harris going to, the MAC is a good mid-major. DePaul is a power school. They're in the Big East. That's where Sumnick went. Teresa, obviously, Kentucky is. St. Louis, Atlantic 10, that's a mid-major, and Hampton is a low mid-major. So that's why, if you go to the top of the chart, why the portal evaluations from the national services is high. We're high. We're in the top 5, no matter which one you look at. Right. So the quality of just like in football, the quality of the kids coming in exceeds the quality of the players who've decided to leave. And we're seeing the same thing in football here. This is an update of, since we last talked about it a few weeks ago, we're still getting good grades on the portal additions. Those are pretty much coming to an end. 17th nationally and 2nd in the Big Ten. Colorado is number 1. And the ones that have come in recently I think are going to make a big splash. Robinson is a highly thought of wide receiver at Mississippi State. Our wide receiver room has, I think, just elevated significantly. And this Tarnu, Joey and Shane talked about him the other night from Jackson State. He's very highly thought of too. But the big surprise, Mickey, I don't know. I'm going to ask you a question. Have you ever seen this? If you look at the second line of the guys who've transferred out, Justin Johnson, a very, very highly thought of running back, has decided to leave college football, and he's now a high school running backs coach in Texas. Have you ever seen that, where a kid gives up eligibility and goes right from I think he was a sophomore or a junior and goes right into high school coaching?
Wow.
Not right into high school coaching. Eddie Williams, who set the ground rushing record that night in the Peach Bowl back in 1969, over 200 and forget exactly right now, I think 212 yards or so. But that was his junior year, and he never came back to school for his senior year. He went home and started his life off. So, people have their personal reasons for doing things sometimes.
Yep, and I think one of the issues nowadays is concerns that players have over CTE, et cetera. But one of the other takeaways from that, go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say that's a new for the transfer portal. You go from college football player to high school running backs coach.
Yeah,
exactly. I don't really expected the portal to work that way.
Yeah, if you add the outs together, those that are still in the portal and the ones that have transferred with all the destinations, again, few of those folks who transferred are at Power 5 or Power. What they're saying now is we've got the Power 4 plus Notre Dame, still the Power 5. But if you look at where they're going, very few of them are ending up at Power 5 schools. Some like Miller are, but Dudley's at Mercer. Stokes, who just announced, is at Findlay, which is, I think, a Division III. James Madison, good school, good program, but and then you still have 5 players that have not committed yet. Might mention this Genros kid again. The tight end room is going to be solid. He was the number 1 tight end in the community college ranks last year. And I think this last visual I'll show, Brown's done a good job with recruiting. This is a comparison of the 24 class with the new freshman next year, the 25 class. And you can see, according to Rivals, that West Virginia, early as it is, we have a higher ranked national team coming in 25 than we did in 24. And if you look at that 24 list, I don't think there's a guy on that list there of the top ones who isn't going to play this year. I mean, Farmer comes in with great credentials. Zay Jennings had a phenomenal spring game. He's already here. Anukwa Kukwa is an outstanding player. Boyce is a great player. But if you look at these guys on the right side, I'll tell you what, Ramondo Johnson, who just signed, Disidor, again, Joey and Shane did a show on him. These guys are really outstanding players.
Yep, really good players, highly touted, and they talked about them a lot on Tony Creedy's show that yesterday, especially about the running back, Desinor, I think is the way you say it. Really, really good football player, and they gave the list of all those that were recruiting, and it was a very formidable list. You had of course Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, all those recruiting this guy. He ends up in West Virginia. So again, I think just goes to show. I think that Neil Brown is finding the niche in that portal, and in his recruiting. If you look at the portal, then you look at the people that he's got coming in 25, gives you confidence. I mean, you just feel good about what they're doing. He just keeps doing it.
Boy, there's a lot to get excited about. And
one other thing, Frank, I want to mention before we get off, and some of these guys in the portal could always, that hadn't signed yet, consider one of our former Mountaineer greats just took a head football coaching job at Rio Grande University. And they're restarting their program after, 45 years, I guess. And they'll be not playing this coming year, but the next season is when they're going to actually start playing again. And Quincy Wilson will be the new head coach. So that's these guys might look to head to Rio Grande. That'll be a nice place to go to school. Yeah. So
another great character guy who really loves coaching. You've set up our guest for next week. So talk a bit about who we'll have next week, Greg.
Well, we it looks like we're going to have former Mountaineer great Steve Newberry is going to be on with us, and I had Steve on my show one time, and he is an awesome interview, great WVU representative, heck of a football player, and just a really great guy. And we're looking so forward to having Steve Newberry on, which will be awesome. Aaron Beasley, now. I'm assuming that we've got him. I know we were in the middle of trying to get him nailed down. We're hoping we've got him nailed down. I think everybody that's watching our show remembers Aaron Beasley. What a great defensive back, two of the best to play at West Virginia. So could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're again with Mike Dunlap's help. We're trying to get Aaron on the show and also have a representative or two from the Football Foundation that organizes the Hall of Fame. And what a lot of people, I was reading a blog today that said, a lot of people would think that the career interception leader at WVU would be Aaron Beasley, and he's tied with Steve Newberry. So and Steve's in the Hall of Fame, West Virginia Hall of Fame. So he's the real deal. So. Thanks for lining him up. There's
a guy in there with them all. My hometown, I mentioned him before, Tom Pridemore. He's right in that mix too. I think.
Oh my God!
Beasley and all of them are tied right there at 14 or 15. I don't remember, but he's in the Hall of Fame as well at WVU, and he's in that list. That's some good defensive backs. I heard him talking about Iowa being known as a tight end university. I'm not so sure West Virginia couldn't be a defensive back university and running back university. It's many good defensive backs and running backs we've had over the years. So.
Yeah, that's right. If you ever have a chance to get on YouTube, Google Pridemore's interception. And I can't remember who he had it against, but it was the most elegant interception return for a touchdown I've ever seen. What an athlete.
Yeah, it seems to me like it was Penn State, but I'm not sure.
I think it was.
I know
I
he
think
had
it
a
was.
long one against Penn State. That might have been the one.
Yeah,
And
I think-
I talked to a gentleman, ironically, up here a few weeks back, and he played during that time, and he knew Tom, and he was fussing. He said, "Yeah," he said, my brother or somebody had intercepted a pass and run it back. He said it was 108 yards if they would have counted the end zone, but back then they only counted from goal line to goal line. So 100 yards is a record. That's the best it could get. so he was fussing about it. He was doing it in jest, of course.
Yeah.
Guys, I tell you what, another great show,
Yep.
great guests, and Mickey, appreciate you getting on and adding to the program. We know you've been battling some health issues, but it's always great to have you on.
Well, thanks, Greg. I appreciate that. And don't forget, two things I'll close with here. Number one, 80 days out from kickoff against Penn State here.
That's
We got
right.
11 Saturdays to go, I think. And we'll be taking down those Nittany Lions on that day and shocking the world.
There you go.
So
there you go.
And just remind all the Mountaineer fans out there, in about 9 minutes here, we got Joe Mazzulla coming up with the Boston Celtics.
There you go. Yep. Got
Joe
the
Mazzulla.
Celtics. Yep.
Yeah.
And one last thing, talking about the football game, I heard yesterday. I must not have a life because I listen to all kinds of talk shows, but they were talking about WVU's season ticket sales, and right now they said they were at like 24,000 right now, which last year was the total season ticket holders, and they still said they had about a month and a half for season tickets, and they expect that to be well over 30,000, close to 35,000. So that's good news. Excitement back in the program. So, all right, guys, been a fun night as always. Enjoyed it, and look forward to doing it again next Wednesday night. For everybody out there watching, give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. We appreciate you tuning in, and we look forward to coming to you next week on the Mountaineer Locker Room then and now. Good night, everybody.
Let's go Mountaineers.